morning and welcome to Frank's School, 7th year, 32nd day, first video. Characters for the wordless movie Resurrection. Now this looks like a lot, and I'll go a little fast, I think. The entr'acte, I roughed out an entr'acte, which is a little bit like the overture, a lot like the overture, except between Act 1 and Act 2. In it, I show stills of various shops where the characters, for a while, that will be their domain. Anyway, I roughed it out. I used the same tune, or the same cantata, but the second movement is what I'd want there. Okay, now, Marion. I'm going through the characters in the order that they show up. Marion I talked about. I want to say that in a way he would have the function of Captain Nemo in Mysterious Island. Captain Nemo, in a sense, Mysterious Island is a sequel to 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and Captain Nemo ends up supplying what the characters need on that island to survive. You could also think a little bit of Gandalf, in that he's old. You know, it's not the same. Neither one of those are the same, but I wanted to mention them. Marion needs to be old, he needs to be healthy, he needs to be strong. I've got a neighbor, Jack. I'm going to use first names here in general, not whole names, but Jack could qualify in a way. I actually mentioned to once, but he was so whimsical about it, I thought it'd probably be too hard to work with him. So at the moment, in terms of casting, who would I cast? Me, by default. I'm here all the time. I would be available. And another thing, Marion, his timbre was a drum, or in my mind, it's a drum, and I didn't actually give him a leitmotif, a tune, a melody, but it seems like it's becoming Krislagen Todesbanden, a dreary tune. But I suppose almost by default that could be considered his. I don't know about that at all. All right, I want to turn to Bryn. Bryn is the second character to show up. She would arrive walking out of the woods, and in a sense, and the name. Her name, although you wouldn't know this in the movie, is Valerie Bryn, Marion's daughter. Ultimately, the viewer might figure out that Bryn is the daughter to Marion, but it would not be told, and they would just kind of have to figure that out. But when I get to the backstory, I'll say more about that. But she's based on a Valkyrie. Actually, the leader of the Valkyries is often said in Norse mythology. Brunhilde, this is usually an E here. Brunhilde. And Brunhilde is Odin's daughter, and it's quite a story. She ends up being rescued from a ring of fire by Siegfried, and her father takes away her immortality because she disobeyed him and didn't do quite exactly what he had said to do. Anyway, that you wouldn't really need to know any of that, I think. She saves the day in the movie at this point, in a way, because it has been so dreary, the opening, that I worry about that. As I'd said, that the overture, I was rather surprised at the powerful effect that the music, together with those dreary pictures, had. But her theme is sheep may graze in pastures safely, again from Bach. It's not a real lively, joyous tune, but it's a comfortable, pretty tune. And it's usually opened in parallel thirds. Dun, da, da, dun, da, 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 da. And her timbre would be a recorder, either an alto or a tenor recorder. I tried to make these instruments that the characters could actually carry, and they would bring to the movie. And ideally, at some point or other, they would play together. So she arrives, and along with her in the pretty calm tune, color would become, whereas the overture would be done to black and white, it would eventually go into color. You would see her beauty, and you would see animals, and it would be like all of a sudden there was life coming into it. Now, along with her, again, ideally, I imagine she's carrying a sack on her head. Now, where I came up with that is because I still think in terms of Portugal. Chiqueiro, an abandoned village. Well, it could be any of several abandoned villages in Portugal or Brazil. And at different times I've been struck by how perfect people's posture has to be if they're carrying a load on their head, which is the obvious place, if you're able to carry a heavy load. And she would arrive either that or maybe with a backpack if that were just undoable. And what's in the sack is about half of the food supply for the first weeks that they're there. It's rice, a sack of rice in her head, but you wouldn't know that. And she would arrive with the goats around her. And all of this stuff, as I say, would kind of save the day, making you think, oh, maybe it won't be so dreary. She should be associated with grazing animals. Not all animals, I don't think, because the chickens I would reserve for a different, some of the other animals for a different character. And the gardens. Again, she would probably, well, yes, she'd definitely share the work, but she would be a goat herd, if you want, or a shepherdess. But I don't want sheep in this. I don't think they're going to be goats, at least here. And gardens. She would be the primary gardener. Now, her beauty should cause lust in Festus, whom you've not yet met. She is so beautiful. And Festus, being the way he is, he should lust for her. I'd said that's going to be one of the driving forces in the plot. At least that's kind of my plan. Now, she's got quite a backstory. Let me just I'll have to be quick with this. Bryn is the daughter of Marion. And Marion, in the earlier work, The Song of Marion, he is mute. He never speaks a word. He's not deaf, but he just doesn't use words. Well, Marion, or Bryn, when she's born, it becomes clear pretty early that she also has a speech defect. She can speak, but she stutters. She stammers. And in the backstory, that gives her quite a hard time in school. And eventually school gets so hard for her that she is homeschooled and sort of, and she ends up living up on a mountain. But she, and actually, that being business of saved by from a ring of fire, well, that happens in the backstory. A character named David, who's also fairly big. He's black, handsome, but extremely buff and extremely athletic. He saves her, and they're mated then. That's her mate, and that's one of the things Festus doesn't understand or know, that she has a mate. Now, once this is all backstory. You wouldn't know this stuff, but once she's up on the mountain, she comes her profession is a first responder for a while, and she basically lives in isolation up there. But she'll, of course, if you know the story of the Valkyrie, you can see where that comes from. All right, that backstory. Maybe the one other thing I should say early is when she gets there and confronts her father and she bows before him and he kisses her feet. That would be very dramatic, never exactly explained, but I'll explain it. That's the shift where he has seen the error of his ways in being this stern, strict father figure. And he now has changed, and he accepts women in general. I mean, this has to do with the whole change in the culture that's going on right now. You think of it as women's rights if you want, but I think it goes way beyond that. He now is going to abandon that macho father know-it-all kind of stuff. But none of this would be really explained. It would just be that act. All right, now, the casting. Well, if you know who Mika Brzezinski on TV, she should be fair. Her skin, her hair should be fair. I guess I should maybe say blonde, but it wouldn't have to be blonde. Light brown would be fine. But she needs to be fair for reasons of diversity, which I'll explain later on. She would be the representative of the Northern European kind of a look to humans. Mika Brzezinski, if you know who she is incredibly blonde. I think her heritage comes out of Czechoslovakia, not Finland, but she looks like she must be Finnish, and her skin is extremely fair. She's strong looking though. Now I think Mika is around 50. But I just mentioned her, and I wouldn't want in a movie anybody that was recognizable, bringing their fame from some other. No, they would be disqualified. But anyway, I mentioned her if you know what she looks like. Not only blonde and fair-skinned, but strong-looking. Sunland, there's a character, or not a character, there's a woman. I say these newscasters because people see them all the time on TV. Oh, what's her last name? Safadi or something like that. She has a remarkable look. She's blonde. She looks strong. She's rather tall. Pamela Brown is another one that you might see. I had to give her whole name really because you wouldn't know who I meant otherwise. Yeah, she's not tall. She's strong looking, and the woman should be pretty. I mean, very pretty to look at, which these women are. There was a Roman dancing girl. I say Roman because she was from Rome, but I saw her at a dance, at an informal thing in Lisbon, Portugal. And at that time I thought, aha, there's the character right there that I would use, largely because of her dancing ability. And I discussed her elsewhere. It would take some looking, but you could probably find her in Frank's school, because I discussed that whole experience. Oh, I think I do in the first playlist that I made at some point. Now, Erica, my daughter, would be, if casting, these these are too famous. There's a woman named Megan that I saw when I saw a former student. When I saw the way she moved, she's pushing 40 now, I think, but I actually said something to her. Because she had that athletic look about her. A much a younger woman named Hannah that I know of would qualify, and even Liza. Actually, I haven't seen Liza in years, but Liza is the daughter to this man Jack that I mentioned. I don't know what she looks like now. Actually, it's been so long. But this is a hard one to come up with. Who could that be cast there? All right, so much for Bryn.